This is your house. This is your car. This is your toothbrush. These are your things. But these are the things that matter. And somewhere in between is this guy. Introducing Jibo, the world's first family robot. Say hi, Jibo.
Hi, Jibo.
Jibo helps everyone out throughout their day. He's the world's best cameraman. By intelligently tracking the action around him, he can independently take video and photos, so that you can put down your camera and be a part of the scene.
Jibo, take the picture.
He's a hands-free helper. You can talk to him, and he'll talk to you back, so you don't have to skip a beat.
Excuse me, Anne?
Yes, Jibo.
Melissa just sent a reminder that she's picking you up in half an hour to go grocery shopping.
Thanks, Jibo.
He's an entertainer and educator. Through interactive applications, Jibo can teach.
Let me in, or else I'll... And I'll... And I'll blow your house in.
Hey, where'd you go? There you are.
He's the closest thing to a real-life teleportation device. He can turn and look at whoever you want with a simple tap of your finger.
Check out my turkey dinner, Mom.
I wish you wouldn't eat that.
Hey, they make turkey pizza? I want turkey pizza.
And he's a platform, so his skills keep expanding. He'll be able to connect to your home.
Welcome home, Eric.
Hey, buddy. Can you order some takeout for me?
Sure thing. Chinese, as usual?
You know me so well.
And even be a great wingman.
You have a voice message from Ashley. Want to hear it?
Absolutely.
Hey, call me when you're home.
Better make that takeout for two, Jibo.
We've dreamt of it for years, and now he's finally here. And he's not just an aluminum shell, nor is he just a 3-axis motor system. He's not even just a connected device. He's one of the family.
Good night, Jibo.
Jibo, this little bot of mine.
A little glimpse of Jibo. The important points are Jibo is actually an open platform, so much like the Internet of Things, it's beyond these initial core set of skills you would see in the first product release, but a third-party developer community can continue to add all kinds of new skills and content. In many ways, Jibo and social robotics is all about being a new platform for highly engaging content that's much more humanized than what we see on flat screens. So that's the big takeaway I want you to have on Jibo.
And now Josh, and again, we're trying to tie them. We'll all hopefully come together. But Josh, he's the co-founder of Ditto Labs.
I want a Jibo first.
Anyway, on the Jibo point, I've seen this video a gazillion times as an investor in the company, but I'm always amazed at how confident that the girl will stay overnight or overnight.
It's because of Jibo. He's a wingman.
I'm Josh Wachman. I'm a co-founder of Ditto Labs, which is literally across the street here. We are a ad tech company, and what we are doing is complementing many of your tools that you probably have in your advertising agency now to scan the text that people publicly post on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and et cetera. And we're looking at the photos, so we believe we have a must-have technology. What I'm going to show you here on the screen now is a public stream of photos which are uncurated, hence the warning you might see some objectionable material. So what we are doing is continuously mining using computer vision the stream of photos that people are posting, and we're finding the logos that are posted. The logos are indications of products, and products are indication of interests and affinities. So we have a stream of data and analytics tool, which I'm not going to show you here right now. But the photos, you can get a sense of people's affinity for candy bars, cars, clothing, beverages, everything you're probably in the business of trying to sell or market.
And so we'll talk a little bit about how the change in the connected everything, so to speak, ties back to all of these pieces. So, in fact, why don't we start by laying the groundwork definitionally? The Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything. Hacker Chick, why don't you get us started? Tell us what that's all about and why now.
Sure. So kind kind of putting it simply, I think of the Internet of Things as taking the technology that's currently in our computers and our phones and actually moving that into the objects where we care about it. So an example is it's interesting to check the weather on your phone, but Ambient created an umbrella that actually tells you the weather. So you might imagine an umbrella stand near your door, and as it senses you walk past it, it'll blink if it's going to rain, so you know to take it with you. Or Velour created a bicycle that not only gives you directions, but tracks your riding stats. And Happy has created a fork that monitors your eating habits to help you eat more healthily. So, you know, I feel like what's pulling all of this together now is for a really long time, whenever we've had to deal with technology, we've had to deal with it in this very unnatural, sort of abstract way, because it's on our computers or it's on our devices. But now, there's a whole lot of things that are coming together. One is things like 3D printing that are making it so much cheaper and easier to create our own physical objects and devices. And then things like Arduinos or Raspberry Pis you might have heard of are these tiny, tiny little computers that you can get for as cheap as $20 that you can now hook up to your physical objects that you're creating and give them compute power and give them the ability to connect to the internet so that your umbrella can go find out the weather. And then I think what gets really interesting is as these devices start to be able to talk to one another. So you might imagine your fork telling your bicycle that you ate a little too much last night, and so you need to bike a few extra miles today.
So let's take that notion, and I want to come back to the whole, do we want to be talked to by so many devices, and how does it shape our lives, but also that of a 1-month-old who is born in this day and age? So that's actually open to you. And our relationships in this Internet of Things, Cynthia, are actually tied to water, dirt. I'm going to throw in aerobic, I think the temperature point was made. Where does the social piece come in, and how does robotics fit into the Internet of Things notion?
Yeah, so I think in the big picture, when we talk about the Internet of Things, I mean, at the Media Lab, we've been thinking about, you know, things that think for many decades actually already. And it is a simple vision of what happens when everything has computation, has sensing, can communicate, and can take action. Like everything around you, from the microscopic things in your body for health, to the things that work side by side with you, to environments, to, you know, so in that view, almost anything is a robot. We're almost living within this kind of new synthetic natural ecosystem. My work is in social robotics, and so we have various paradigms in how we think about interacting with technology today. Today, largely we think of technology as tools that we use, and it makes sense, of course. My work is really exploring more of this interpersonal dimension of if technology doesn't only interact with us as a tool that we use, but almost as something that we live with, like you see with Jibo, the fact that we are such profound social and emotional creatures at our core, the fact that the way we think and decide and act is not just about information, it's about what we feel and our attitudes and our social networks. When technology can start to support all of our humanity in a much more coherent way, a much more holistic way, a lot of my research has actually shown we do better, we make better decisions, we stay healthier, we actually are more successful. So when we talk about social robotics, I see the next wave of computing going from the democratization of information to humanized engagement, to this emotional engagement. So emotional computing is the next big wave, and I think that has a lot of relevance to people who are trying to connect to people and make things that are not only interesting but meaningful at a much more personal level. So that's really what the big vision of Jibo is about. It's about this new shift to emotive technology. And again, it's now what happens when technology actually engages you as another, as part of the family, it's part of the group and not part of the stuff. So much of the Internet of Things stuff now is about the stuff. But the things that's been so profound about the work I've done with social robotics is people intuitively want to accept a relational technology as part of the group. And what happens when that's the case? If we're already emotionally willing to do that, how does that change what you do?
And so imagine the world where we're all in our house, our devices are talking to each other. We have Jibo as part of the extension to the family. What that means is that the amount of data we're seeing today is going to look like negligible. And the amount of data being collected on us, both utilized to our advantage and perhaps other questions around our privacy, is gigantic. But to you, Josh, how could Ditto going forward, take advantage of that amount of data and how we interact with devices and then capture the images and rich media, and how could that be valuable to this audience?
Thanks. I guess at a personal level, the opportunity for mining the photos that people post for brand affinities, for personalization, to be able to be a member of the set, just like you may follow or like something explicitly. If you're posting pictures of lots of sports teams, if you're posting pictures of lots of rock and roll band T-shirts, this information can plug in and infuse what happens on your device. We have not built that. It's not the business that we're in. This is sort of an opportunity for the individual to benefit over the long term. In the short term, it's really about trying to help the brand marketers understand who are the influencers, who are the strongest advocates, who are the fan addicts of a particular brand and product suite. That's the data that we're delivering based on a cast-off, really, of what people are sharing person to person and person to network all day long. I think the big opportunity, though, I wanted to mention a couple of years ago in my previous startup, I had a business making a connected pill bottle cap, which is also an Internet of Things thing. And at the time we did this, which is over 5-6 years ago now, there really weren't that many objects that were connected to the Internet that you could use in your daily living. So we tried to be polite about it. We tried to have the escalating reminders to tell you it was time to take your medication emerge in an escalating way that would be polite and not be intrusive, like the age-old smoking trend just goes flaring off. So I think a big opportunity is to imagine 5-6 years down the road where there are many of these devices, and I think the context awareness that was shown in the Jibo is really the key opportunity for all these devices to be sensitized to. So your pill bottle and your Nest and your toothbrush and everything else that you're using that has a little bit of smarts in it is aware of each other, so that it's actually providing value for you rather than making you more twitchy and more ADD.
So evidence the fact that now, given connectivity of devices, we have, whether it's wireless or connected, but mostly wireless, the sufficient low bandwidth and speed as far as connectivity is concerned. We have AI coming down the learning curve, and we have the speech recognition. So it feels like we have pieces and they're together. One of the questions is, does 80% of everything, or 80% there, and most of those things, actually deliver a good enough world of connectivity with the Internet of Things, or is it going to be a mess and it will be another 5 to 10 years before this hot subject that we love to talk about becomes reality?
I mean, I feel like a lot of the technology is there, and you guys can probably speak to this more. I'm not a hardware person, but as I understand, especially as hardware is getting so much easier and cheaper to make, a lot of the components are there, even if maybe they could be a little cheaper or smaller. I see, and maybe this is my bias being a software person, that a lot of the challenge comes into software, is what do you do with all of this data? How do you make it meaningful? And also on the design side of things, like we have a lot of devices, a lot of the early devices that are being used by early adopters like Jawbone and Fitbit and Misfit are nice and they're great, but are those practical enough? Are those really going to make it so that we can be more present in what we're doing instead of sort of the ADD where we're staring at our phones and staring at our devices? I mean, my hope, my vision for Internet of Things is it's going to sort of get out of the way so that we can be more present in what we're doing. And so I feel like even if the technology is there, we need the great design minds to figure out how do we make this more natural. And then the software side of things, just how do we deal with all of this data to make it meaningful?
So that actually sets me up nicely for Cynthia's question. It is a real worry. Our kids sit around the table, and even I am guilty of this. I sneak and look at my phone, respond to a text message or an email, and so there's a real challenge about a whole new generation, like Generation Z as it's referred to, which are basically 140 character patients and the just-in-time and tied digital natives. How does throwing all these devices and even, Jibo in the midst of this affect our family structure on the society sense, but also the way we adopt, drive, and interact with technology?
Yeah, so first, I absolutely agree that these successful products have to be a combination not only of amazing technology, but great design and really thoughtful application, right? So thinking about in the case of Jibo, I mean, this is a new product category for the home. A lot of my work at the Media Lab has been motivated by a frustration of what you know, these devices, these smartphones, I mean, they're meant for the individual, right? They were designed for a one-to-one interaction, and you bring them into the home, and now they're starting to connect our devices, and you're getting this dynamic. People are sitting around the dinner table all looking at their devices and not looking at each other. I think, you know, things around the Internet of Things that are physically instantiated that engage us more as one of the group brings back being in the real world, brings back bringing in the real moment. The thing that I've seen again and again with the social robotics in particular is it brings back the face-to-face dynamic, because Jibo can actually be one of the group. So I think different thinking about our relationship with technology and our experience with technology in the context of other people and how we bring back the richness of the interpersonal connection and communication, I think is really important, because I do feel we're almost kind of going off, you know, too much of the 140 characters and too much of the ADD in our faces and the devices versus being present in the real world. So there's a huge opportunity there. And again, I think it has to get down to the core of what are our human values? What is the experience we want to have in these environments, in our homes? What kind of parents do we want to be? What kind of ways do we want children to relate to each other in the family and the home in the context of technology? And we need to design to support that. And I think there's a huge opportunity here. And Jibo is one vision, and you know, there's of course many others. But I do think we're in a particular time where there's a sensitivity, I think, of the home dynamic around the role of technology, how we engage with it, especially in a home context.
So Josh, what does this all mean for the marketer? What does it mean for, you know, we talk about mobile as a pervasive phenomenon, which it is, but, you know, mobile teams within agencies or even marketing departments probably didn't exist 5 to 7 to 8 years ago, much like social teams didn't exist. So technology happens, and then part of what drives the adoption is really all the minds in this room telling their brands, their clients, where they should be heading and where the consumer mindset is. So let's dare to imagine what are the ramifications for the marketers and brands. And by the way, I'll open this out to all of you.
I guess I can't speak globally about all the stuff we've talked about up here, but in our case, I think the impact of being able to see the way people interact with their environment, whether it be through the photos that are being collected in the home, which they like to share, or the photos that they're casting out into the realm, is an indication of passion and interest. In the case of posting to Twitter, Tumblr, or Instagram, you're making a curated moment of pulling out your phone, taking a picture of somebody or something that's important to you, and deciding to share it to whatever 100,000 people are your friends on Twitter. In that context, you're declaring, you're emphatically supporting a particular product, brand, or a moment and saying, this is important to me. That seems like that's a very critical piece of information which underscores or complements what people have been tweeting or writing in text or sharing or following online. So we see this as a complementary signal of interest which can inform your decisions about who to reach, how to engage with them, when to engage with them, and what to do across a whole set of categories that people share across.
Cynthia, what can people do, you know, with these new form factors that are no longer flat? They may or may not be mobile, they may or may not be in the center of the home, but let's think about brands, CPGs, what are the opportunities?
Yeah, so, I mean, I certainly think there's a huge opportunity. You know, again, Jibo speaks to this as well, as a technology that actually builds relationships with individuals. So beyond just personalization of preferences, imagine a technology that lives with the family, gets to know the family, gets to know the patterns, gets to know the kind of ebbs and flows of interest. You know, even just, you know, these little moments where you come home and something like a Jibo can ask, oh, you saw a movie, how did you like it? I mean, it takes effort to go to a computer and enter something down on a, you know, typing it, right? But just the ease of that convenience of just, oh, it was great, Jibo. You know, I mean, the way that you can gather, you know, the senses of what people care about, I think is through this, again, this notion of this relationship, this casual one of the group relationship, I think is really new and different. That's not how we relate to technology today, but that's, I think, certainly what our future can and will be with products like Jibo. So again, just so much about brands is building relationship, right, with your customers. Social robotics is about building relationship with people, and technology is moving again in this new, more deeper, emotional kind of interpersonal relationship. And I think it's fascinating. It has fascinating, I think, implications.
And I'll let some do that. Because of where I sit in my business, I can imagine, in fact, these new devices entire brands, whether they're CPGs on the makeup side, guiding women or whoever on how to wear makeup, giving real-time feedback, or the lighting is not right, or keep the wrong shade. You can imagine entire educational software applications coming up, whether it's on a Jibo format or a form factor or another one. So it's all of a sudden, brace yourselves, because if you share a belief that the Internet of Things is actually happening now, you have a whole new set of platforms that you can now start advertising, that the brands can truly interact
one-on-one with us, with consumers, as opposed to the broadcast mediums like Facebook and Twitter, which are often mistakenly taken as one-on-one relationships, and they're not. So with that thought, I'd like to open it up to you. Please be brave and raise your hand and make me look good. Edward Boches, of course.
The last comment about data, the relationship to the robot, really, and what you said, Rudina, suggests some really interesting brands tapping into the whole privacy issue. So, have you thought about that model yet? I mean, I would be an opt-in kind of thing, so I can authorize Jibo to share how I feel, my physical ailments with my health plan, or I could authorize it to share certain reactions with brands, and then there's potential revenue stream for you guys based on how that gets opted in by people, and then there's a whole education in terms of why you should or shouldn't share that data with this digital comrade.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree. When you think about this new kind of relationship with a technology like Jibo or a social robot, that relationship and that trust and that privacy is absolutely key. That the technology has to respect your privacy, and I do think opting in is really important. So if we just put Jibo aside and just think about it in terms of this whole space of social robotics, there's a huge opportunity in my mind towards technologies that serve as an advocate for you too, right? So like you're saying, to educate you, to help make sure that you're informed, to help you make the best decisions. I think that's part of this relationship that I think is really important, that a technology can actually, you feel it's in your corner, it's got your back. I think it's huge. And when we think about social robotics as a whole area, it really is, again, this paradigm shift from technology as tool to one of partnership. So I think all of that is very, very key. Absolutely.
There's a ramification about who controls one's life. Is it you? Are you giving up that control, and how you balance your life? I think as we make technology a partner, I think we are influencing our societal values in a lot of ways, and we're shaping a new generation. Better or worse, I don't know, but technology is really, like we talked about, the household and how we're interacting with the phones or with the iPad, the digital babysitter, as I call it. It's affecting our values, our concerns, and what we need to do about it. I think Jibo is going to alleviate some of that, and it's opening up new questions, and I think that's the nature of the beast. It's called technology. Go ahead, sir.
I have another question for Cynthia, and that is, how did you go about picking the features to include in Jibo? Did you follow a kind of minimum class approach with it? And, what did you do? It's really interesting to see the way that you chose to have it look at people. I think there's some critical, some real assumptions there about whether people would actually interpret that as being, a representation of a real thing. And, so I'm wondering if that's something you found a way to prove more so.
Yeah, so certainly, there's just a lot of depth of my research and experience in doing social robots for almost 15 years now that obviously are coming in to inform the Jibo form factor. And as you pointed out, this sort of very elegant abstraction of anthropomorphic but not too explicit. And one of the benefits of that is that it makes it much more flexible, right? So if you look at a lot of other consumer robots in the market, or like even like these very humanoid robots, the more detail you put in, the actual more you limit it, because you're filling in things as opposed to leaving it as white space. So Jibo is really designed to be, I think, the biggest bang for your buck in terms of this interpersonal dynamic, but this abstraction, so that Jibo, again, is a platform for content, for all kinds of content. You saw stories, and you saw functions like telepresence, and you can imagine news and weather. I mean, opening it up really as this open platform idea of bringing all kinds of content to life with this interpersonal dynamics, this emotional engagement. That was really the goal behind the design of Jibo. And so, again, you know, obviously many iterations as you go through a creative design process and choosing those features, but a lot of it was core to just a lot of my depth of knowledge and where the sweet spot was, and then refining that, certainly doing prototypes, putting it in front of people, doing, again, an iterative process there. But certainly it feels like what we've done is struck a chord. I mean, people comment they love the idea, they love the abstraction, the emotional engagement, but also kind of, again, the versatility of that design.
And by the way, we haven't touched it, and I'd love for you to weigh in on this. Because it's a platform, what does it mean is it hackable? Does it open up the space for cool hacker chicks like yourself to create their own apps, kind of like we're seeing very much in the, in the iOS or even Android?
Yeah, definitely. So Rudina and I were talking about this a little yesterday, talking about, does all of the technology that's coming out in the Internet of Things make things more hackable? And when I use the term hackable, that term is kind of, as a developer, being called a hacker is like one of the most honorable, prestigious things that you can be called, because a hack is taking something and making it do more than anyone ever thought was possible. So think of hack from that perspective, not breaking into a computer. And I think it's really fascinating, not just what's happening with open platforms like Jibo, but also things like 3D printers are making it so much easier for people to customize things. I feel like it's changing our expectations. So before, I feel like a lot of things were made kind of mass market, that, you know, hey, I want the cheapest thing possible, and I can do that based on economies of scale because I'm doing, you know, at such a huge quantity. But now I feel like consumers are much more valuing being able to customize things, even small customizations, and I think that's really exciting. One thing that I think about when I think about some of this technology as a techie is sometimes it's scary, because if these objects are making decisions for us, you know, should I bike more? Should I watch this movie? Should I go to this show? I worry that if everything is being imagined for us based on these algorithms, that maybe it gives us almost tunnel vision, right? So everything that's being recommended for us and everything that we're doing is so based on what we're doing today. And I think what makes the world kind of beautiful and wonderful is when you have all the diversity. And so I love the idea of things becoming more hackable so that everybody, not just the hardcore techies, are able to customize experiences and bring that diversity into all of us, if that makes sense.
I'd love to reinforce that. So I think one of the advantages of something like Jibo that's its own persona is Jibo can have its own likes and interests too, and to leverage that as a way of exposing you to new things that you might not be aware of that you liked. I do have a concern that, you know, when everything is getting so channeled to what it thinks we want as opposed to broadening our perspectives, we're getting very narrow, right? We're getting overly exposed to kind of a very narrow worldview. So I do think these other kinds of relationships can act as a counterpoint to help broaden our perspectives, to help us be more mindful. I think that's really important in a new way that we engage with technology.
Any more questions? Go ahead. And then to you, sir, after that.
I was just in a focus group for these people that were preaching redesign of the Pizza Hut app. And something that I realized was a lot of people are concerned about saving their credit card information to like an application on their phone because of privacy and security. This is like, you know, tech in the household and like all your different, you know, devices, your toothbrush, your alarm clock. I imagine there'd be a big demographic that'd be like, you know, worried about their security, and like, you know, if you have an argument in your bedroom, is your alarm clock going to recommend like a therapist? You know, how do you communicate? You know, how do you build trust with the consumer and like introduce people that would be averse to technology? How do you put that in their bedroom?
Let me start tackling this one. So, I have news for you. They're already in your bedroom. You're tracked on satellites. you have your phone. When you put your phone down, you get on your whatever device you're using, hybrid or not, all the way to the desktop, hopefully no longer desktops, but everywhere. Then you get in your car. If it's halfway tech, it's giving you the GPS. It's probably going to get smarter with each generation. Guess what? You're being tracked. The question is, how do we beef up security in general as an industry? And then second question is, I think there was Edward Boach's question around how do you empower consumers to take back the data? Because we gave it away. We gave it away to Facebook. We gave it away to the platforms. We gave it away. And there's a whole movement, in fact, right at MIT, Sir Timothy Berners-Lee is starting a new movement about consumers taking the data back. But on the security point, it's coming up with new ways of how we tackle hackers, not in the good context. But it's happening today. It's no different than you being hacked with any of your devices. It's just the entry points, or the end points, as security buffs will call them, are more and increased, in which case you have to focus more software around that. But I'll turn it over to you as well, and anyone else.
Yeah, I don't know that I have an easy answer for it. I heard somebody say once that, I don't know, when we look at some technology and say, oh my God, that's almost offensive, and the fact that how much of our privacy it's giving up, that's like a sign, like an indicator that that's going to be the next tech. Like when we look at everything that we share today, I feel like 10 years ago, that would have been this terrible thought to us. And so part of it is, I think, that just culture changes and people accept it. But I don't know, that bothers me. I would really like to see consumers kind of, like Rudina said, take back our data. I don't know. I don't know that I have a good answer to that.
And there are businesses to be built around the consumers taking back their data, so that's a whole nother opportunity. But it's also counter to the trend that marketers want more and more data, which is kind of ironic because they have a lot of it, they're just not mining it properly. But there's this hunger, so we'll see how those two driving forces. Sir, next to Sarah, yes.
How do you reconcile something that only understands the finance 0 or 1 or how do you reconcile, getting to that point of really moving myself to that ability to do you see a time when
Yeah, so actually, I mean, a lot of my research at MIT has been around this bigger question of emotion and technology. So, what I believe is going to be the case is, we have all kinds of relationships with all kinds of different people and creatures, right? It's not the case that robots or technologies are going to try to be exactly human. You're human, you have human emotions, you may have a pet dog. Your dog doesn't share your human emotions, right? You can relate, you can empathize, you can connect, but it's not human, right? I think when we think about robots, it's going to be this new kind of relationship that can be grounded in this affective landscape, but it doesn't mean it has to be identical to humans. So it's about how you create this relational connectivity where, again, like a companion animal, you get what it's communicating to you, and it's authentic for what it can understand. And over time, you can imagine, elaborate and grow, get more sophisticated. But it doesn't have to be exactly human in order to have value for people. So there can be shades of gray with even a human-machine relationship. And I think one of the challenges there is how do you, and frankly, it's with any relationship, how do you help establish that groundwork for that relationship in terms of where the boundaries of the relationship are, right? So when you have a technology like a social robot or like Jibo, it's not coming out of the box claiming that it understands everything that you're doing. It's, a lot of the design is very carefully crafting your expectations for what it can and cannot do, what it can understand, what it can't understand, and maybe where it can go, how it can grow with you. And I think this opportunity for growth is another thing that really appeals to people. So It's richer than 1.0, I can tell you that. It can be a landscape. It doesn't have to be the full richness and gamut of the human landscape to really have value and appeal to people. And I think it's a fascinating landscape because a lot of my work I've been able to show robots, they almost sit at the sort of perfect intersection of our relationship with information connected tools, with companion animals, which has a different sort of relationship with us, right? We relate to animals in a different way. We don't feel our pets are judging us, for instance, right? There's a different kind of openness that we can have with a different kind of relationship. And then there's relationships we have people which are very rich, and of course we talked about all different kinds. Robots are intriguing that they almost sit at this sort of perfect intersection of this non-judgmental supportive presence that is also smart because it's connected, but can also engage with you in some human-like ways too. So it's a fascinating design landscape for how you create that relationship that really provides value and makes sense for people. Yeah.
So we're all, actually, I was just given we're almost out of time. So if your question is quick, you've raised your hand multiple times, I'll take it.
Question for Josh. You built a really smart image recognition system. And as a marketer, I want exactly what you built.
Great, lead gen.
Give me afterwards.
How do you see that expanding, technology expanding into, building it into social robots and other areas? Is that part of the stuff you're thinking about, or are you thinking of a more contained ecosystem?
Well, at the near term, because we're actually in business to have investors, we have to deliver on the return. So the focus is really selling our analytics product and the stream of data to folks like you to get the return. But on the technical side, I can tell you what I see is coming. We're leveraging machine learning, which is, we see the Coke logo, we see 100 examples of positive examples of Coke and 100 close misses but no cigar. We teach the computer that, and then it goes on forever to find great Coke logos. But beyond that, looking for two-dimensional patterns is a new movement, which maybe you've read about, called deep learning or convolutional neural nets, which are a little bit of a black box for most people. But you show it mountains and mountains of data, and it somehow magically finds things. So we can find things that are not two-dimensional logos, like foodness or dogness or indoor-outdoor or owned versus earned media. And these are types of patterns which we see in static data moving into video or into Jibo or what Cynthia is pursuing. I think it's a big opportunity because the context awareness you could gather from 100,000 or 1 million homes about when it is appropriate to perk up and interact with a human and when not, or what else is going on in the room. That's information which a deep learning algorithm might really succeed at in a way where the dumb ones and zeros that you were talking about would be too brittle and therefore would fail colossally.
So with that, why don't I give you three a chance, and then I'll wrap it up to have any final thoughts. So the connectivity of everything, if there is a parting thought, what is it, Abby? And then Cynthia and Josh.
Again, I think the parting thought is just thinking about there's new kinds of relationships possible with our technologies that can be much more deeply personal and meaningful for people. And I think that's the way it's going. So emotive computing, I think, is going to be one of the next big waves.
Josh? A parting thought. So if
I will gladly give everyone in the room who is interested in using our product for 30 days a free demo. And you can have it here.
Straight to business. And Abby.
All right, I will just say I think it's very exciting seeing everything that's happening here, and opens up a ton of new opportunities. And I think we can just kind of start thinking of things in new ways to deal with this.
And what I will say in closing is that we have the technology. We even have market demand. Cynthia didn't share that she pre-sold before the product even gets delivered 2.4 million almost worth of Jibos. So the market demand is there. I think the delta comes in the creativity and how we leverage these technologies. And that's all of you in this audience. And thank you.